name is Josh Allinger, and I am a member of Westchester Bible Church. Pastor Chad has been sharing some daily devotionals with us and gave me the opportunity to share one with you all. As I have been reading in my Bible over the past few weeks, I came across a story in 1 Samuel chapter 30. And considering everything that is going on with the coronavirus, it seemed very applicable for all of us. I wanted to share what God has been teaching me with all of you. So if you would like, you can turn with me to 1 Samuel chapter 30, or you can just listen as I read the first 6 verses. Now it happened, when David and his men came to Ziklag on the 3rd day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, attacked Ziklag, and burned it with fire, and had taken captive the women and those who were there, from small to great. They did not kill anyone, but carried them away and went their way. So David and his men came to the city, and there it was, burned with fire, and their wives, their sons, and their daughters had been taken captive. Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept, until they had no more power to weep. And David's 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail the widow of Nabal the Carmelite, had been taken captive. Now David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. There are a couple key players we need to know about in the context of this story. The first is David. At this point in his life, he is not yet king of Israel, and in fact he has been on the run from Saul for a long period of time. He and a group of his followers have settled in the city of Ziklag. And then we also need to know who the Amalekites were. They lived in southern Judah and did not follow the one true God, and caused all kinds of problems for Israel. And in fact, if we look just a few chapters before, God had commanded Saul, the king, to utterly destroy the Amalekites because of their wickedness. And as we read the story, we find that Saul was not completely obedient. He left a number of people alive, enough that they were able to come and attack David's city of Ziklag. So when David and his men return home, they find that they have no home. It has been destroyed, and all of their families have been taken captive. And the people, in their grief, look for a scapegoat and turn on David, and they're ready to kill David, their leader. It is a dark moment for David. He seems to have no hope. He has no family. All of his men have turned on him, and he has no home. What does he do in that moment of despair? Let me read it again from verse 6. Now David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the soul of all the people was grieved, every man for his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. And it is that reaction of turning to God that we need to have ourselves when we face trials. It's certainly true for the coronavirus, but it's true at every moment in our lives. There are a couple things that David could have done. David could have succumbed to grief himself. He could have said, "What hope is there? I have nothing left. Seems like God has abandoned me. I have no home or family. I have no friends. What hope is there?" And he could have reacted to his own grief and wallowed in self-pity. He also could have turned the blame on Saul. Saul had disobeyed God. Because of Saul's disobedience, David is now in this hard situation. If Saul had destroyed the Amalekites as God had commanded him, the Amalekites couldn't have taken David and his men's families captive. But we don't see him turning the blame on Saul either. Instead, he chooses to find his strength in God. That is a powerful lesson for us. Whether it's the coronavirus, whether it is another difficult situation that we find ourselves in, our response should always be to turn to God. We might want to be quick to blame someone else. Say, if only they had done what they were supposed to, my life would be easier. We might be quick to have self-pity. Say, my life is so hard. Does God even understand? But what we need to do is we need to turn and put our strength and our reliance in the God who loves us and loved us enough to send his Son to die on the cross for us. We need to remember that we serve a big God. God is able to use any circumstance in our lives to glorify him. What we see happening with David is that he used the sin of Saul to bring about something good. In the moment, David couldn't see that. All he could see was his own trials. But if we continue to study the story, we find that he and his men go after the Amalekites, catch them unawares, and are able to get back not just all of their families, but all of their possessions. And at the end of the day, they come home with more than the Amalekites took, because they are able to plunder the Amalekites. And as we continue, we find that David takes some of that plunder and sends it to the people of Judah. And a short time after that, they make him king. God used this trial to pave the way for David to become king. If we focus on all of the things that are negatively affecting us without relying on God, we will lose sight of God's bigger plan and purpose, which is to bring himself glory. God worked in spite of Saul's sin to bring about something good for David. God can work in spite of challenging situations like the coronavirus to bring about glory for his name. What is our responsibility? Our responsibility is to strengthen ourselves in God. Not in our own ability, not in our own resources, but in the God who saves us. I hope that is an encouraging thought for you. We may not see a positive outcome as quickly as David did. We may never even see a positive outcome to trials in our life while we are yet alive. But what we can take comfort in is that God is working all of these things together for his glory. And may our response be one that glorifies him in the midst of trials.